Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm your host, JJ, and we're today have Hollywood 6 from the Trash Talkers. How you doing?
I'm good, JJ. Thank you so much for having me again, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. And today, we're going to be talking about, I think, something that has been on people's minds for a while, that I hear mentioned every now and again, and I think is always worth discussing, and that is the idea of, I titled it, Truth in the Age of Social Media, right? I feel like how we relate to news stories and to truth and like all sorts of things in that vein has really certainly changed due to social media. Now the question is for the better or for the worse. And opening thoughts, Hollywood.
Okay. I kind of just want to dive directly into this because I have to shout out, Smokey, my brother, Smokey Ramirez. But Smokey always says that social media will be the downfall, or will be and is the downfall of society. And in some aspects, he's absolutely right. But in some aspects, it's like, it can be used for the greater good. Like, for instance, when, us doing this podcast, we're speaking knowledgeable, we're talking to our subscribers, and we're putting out things that need to be heard or things that we just like to speak about. But at the same time, when you have a platform, and literally a platform where anyone can communicate with anyone, it seems like society these days, they feel like their opinion just means so much more. And if you say something which is visible for however many followers or however many subscribers you've got, if you say something and those followers or subscribers think that it's offensive when you didn't intend for it to be offensive, I mean, that's where I think Smokey's right when he says the downfall of society, because literally everyone has a voice and everyone can be heard by everyone. And it's just some things that some people say can be triggered or can trigger other people. So, I mean, it's a yin and yang thing where you have to balance it. But I would have to agree that, like, think about this. Like, let's say, okay, I love Iron Maiden. I love Metallica. So, like, if you saw James Hetfield at a Waffle House in Atlanta, Georgia, you're going to walk up to him and you're like, oh my God, this is my one and only chance to meet the person that I've idolized my entire life. You're going to try to get a selfie with him, you're going to try to get an autograph. But now in today's society, with the social media capabilities that we have, you can literally go to his Instagram and say, hey, I'm a big fan. We didn't have that privilege growing up. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean. It could have a yin and yang and a good and bad part to it, because some people can say things and get offensive, like I said earlier, and then sometimes you can reach out to your favorite artist, which is a great thing. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think the idea that something is going to be the downfall of society seems like something that people prophesy just about every time something new and big comes along. And while it is certainly true that social media is going to shape a lot of how our society functions, I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to be the end. And the thing about the artists, I think, is interesting, because even that has a pro and a con to it, right? Because if you are that artist, you might, on the one hand, enjoy, getting messages from your fans, but on the other hand, first of all, that can be a lot just in aggregate, even if any individual fan is trying to be respectful about it and only sending a message here and there, it still becomes a lot. And then on top of that, you have both people that are more obsessive, even if their obsession is a positive, in as far as they're hyper fans. They're tweeting you every day just with praise and this and that. And then you also got the more negative side, right? Because if you're a public person like that, you don't just have fans, you also have haters. Usually fewer than fans, but also psychologically just they stick out more. And so I think that can be a lot, although of course with those sort of big scale public personalities, most of them realistically probably don't actually run their own social media. And probably get people for that.
Well, the caveat with that is, when you say, you probably have more good comments versus haters, and this is just my opinion here. And YouTube, they not too long ago took away the dislike button. And I think that if you don't like it, like I don't necessarily agree with them taking away the dislike buttons. And also, YouTube has come to the point where they hold back comments if they feel like they are negative. Me personally, I've always been told that your haters are your biggest motivator. So if I see that you're hating on something, that means, hey, that means I'm doing something right. And also, maybe I don't want you to be upset. What can I do to make you feel better? Or if I get 100 dislikes on a video, well, what did I do wrong in this video so I can, you know, make it better? You know what I mean?
I guess that's the idea with taking away the dislikes, where the problem, I suppose, even though, of course, the creator still sees the dislikes. So, first of all, you're not doing the thing. But second of all, I think the idea there is just that it's useful as an indicator, but it's not really criticism in the sense that you would be able to use it, right? Because if someone dislikes your video, that means they didn't like it. If a lot of people dislike your video, there's maybe something wrong with it. But unless someone actually leaves a comment and explains why they didn't like the video, you'll never know. And of course, in theory, people will leave comments, but I guess the idea that a dislike in and of itself is not that useful of an indicator, though I would still say that, again, just by the total numbers, they can tell you which videos you might want to have a second look at. So I think they're still useful, but I understand, at the very least, the official explanation of why they took them away, although, of course, it has been speculated that it's just because certain brands might not like seeing their videos disliked, and so not...
Wait. So what's your reasoning as to why they took it away?
So, some people have speculated that YouTube, as a sort of generally advertiser-oriented platform, has tried not showing dislikes so that brands, not literally advertisers, because I don't think you can like or dislike ads, although I'm not 100% sure, but so that larger brands that post their content on YouTube aren't shown to have terrible like-dislike ratios if people just don't like their content. So they're kind of being sort of a shield for brands. And I'm not sure if this is
true. In a way, can't you...
But
can't you see that as a positive in the same way, though? Like, can't you see, hey... Okay, well, not even that. If you take the dislikes away from a certain brand, it's like, okay, well, obviously, we've had people that like our brand, but now they don't like it, so we need to do something to fix this. And not only that, but doesn't it also make the person... It's almost like we're afraid to shake the cradle a little bit. Like they don't want to, people, they don't want you to get too sensitive. Oh, it's okay. 450 people did not like your video. It's okay. So let's just take it away. Like me and you growing up, it's like, hey, this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's less about the person making the content seeing it. And first of all, again, in this sort of explanation, we're not necessarily talking about you and I. We're talking about these large corporations. Yeah. We're talking about Tonight Show and that sort of type of content, or straight up other corporate stuff where it's not about what you tell them, but it's what other people see when they click on the video, right? So they see, oh, this video isn't very popular, so they then have a negative association with the brand, because marketing is all about associations and about brand awareness, right? So if your brand gets associated with something negative, then that is something that the brand really doesn't like. That's the whole reason why the adpocalypse happened, right? Brands did not like their ads being run on videos that they fundamentally disagreed with, like some extreme examples like beheadings and stuff like that, which I can see why you wouldn't want to be associated with that. But at the same time, I don't think the actual YouTube viewer will necessarily associate your brand with a video that comes after it, because we're kind of used to that just being a separate thing. But because brands oftentimes very traditionally try to have the brand only associated with positive things, then that can oftentimes drive these decisions, even if in practical terms it might not matter. But that's just, how marketing was taught. And the fact of the matter is corporations are very slow moving and they're very set in their ways oftentimes. So if negative associations is bad for our business, then anything that could be seen as a negative association should be removed.
Yeah. Jay, you could say that, and I 100% get where you're coming from, especially when you're dealing with a major corporation, a Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or a huge corporation. But at the same time, you know this saying, good publicity sells, or any publicity is good publicity. So even if you have negative viewers or negative comments or a bunch of dislikes, you're still having those eyes put on brand.
Yeah, but I get that, but it's not really publicity in as far as it doesn't it doesn't like amplify the brand in any way that someone dislikes your video, or that if someone looks at it, they see that there's a dislike on it, right? That doesn't add anything to your brand. The only thing is like that little number that says like, oh yeah, like 50% dislikes. Like that just looks terrible. And
yeah,
I can understand from the corporate point of view why they wouldn't want it, and then hiding dislikes always is seen as disingenuous until YouTube just enforced it. But first of all, I don't think the YouTube taking away the dislike is like the biggest aspect of what we're talking about today. And also, secondly, again, I don't really know definitively why they did it, because all we can do is speculate, right? Kind of going back to the whole question about truth, right? We know what people have speculated, and we know what YouTube has said. And then we are kind of forced to draw our own inferences, right? Did YouTube lie to us? Maybe. We straight up cannot know.
All right. Well, let's look at it from this point of view, okay? And like you said, this isn't directly on what we were speaking on with society technically being the downfall of society, or if it's changing, the way we live. But look at it like this. A child that was born in the year 2000, that person's 22 now. So this person does not know what a life is they don't know what a life is without the internet. If they have a question, do you know how, I was thinking about this the other day. When I was in school, like in 4th or 5th grade, imagine if I had a freaking smartphone in my pocket. Yeah, you wanted to peek over the other kid's shoulder and you may want to take a few answers. You got Google in your pocket. You have the world in your hands. So and at the same time, that could be detrimental to, the educational system, because you're not necessarily being taught these things when you could just pull social media out of your pocket and Google something, or go to Twitter, or go to Reddit, or go to YouTube, and you can instantly find the answer versus being taught. And also, to add to that, speaking to my mother, my mom had a theory that, nowadays there's a lot of bullying going on in schools, because, she works in the school system. But she's like, before the internet, we didn't see that. Yes, you had your bullies, but now not only can bullies bully you at school, if you post a picture on your Facebook, your Instagram, they're going to be like, oh, hey, you look like you're ugly in this, or then that leads to tragedies. That leads to, bad things to happen. And I don't want to say the words, but when you're constantly getting bullied at school and then at home and then on the internet, like, you imagine if you got, you dress up, you put on your makeup, you got this nice outfit, you post it, and 17 comments. You get 18, and 17. One comment from your mom says, "Oh, you look great," but 17 other, "You look like crap." This wouldn't be a thing if we didn't have social media.
Yeah, I think that is also one of the big issues about online bullying specifically, where bullying was always a thing, right? And anyone who says otherwise has just been blind to it. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes bullying would end when you got home from school, right? And so, even though school seems like a very important part of your life while you're in school, it still isn't your entire life, even then, right? And you got after school, some people do after school activities, that's a thing, but you can't also just go home after school, right? And then you have weekends, you've got holidays, right? And in total amount of time, if we say you spend a third of your day in school, which is probably slight exaggeration on average, but that's still 5 days a week, 40 weeks a year or something? That's still not at all a significant part of your life, really. And
yeah, but now come home and
change that to being now effectively 16 hours a day, as in while you're not sleeping, and 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. That's a whole other ballgame.
Yes.
And so that is certainly one of the ways that social media is negatively impacting people.
Well, what do you think about the first part that I brought up about, people being...
Oh, about the teaching stuff?
Instead you being at school and you being able to pull up, does that make our future because they always say kids are the future. But if I could just pull my phone out and find out what 14 times 37 divided by pi minus 5 is without actually doing the formula drawn out, I could just go to Google. Don't you think that kind of messes up our future with kids, maybe?
I think that it doesn't really mess things up as bad as it seems. I think it mostly just exposes a lot of flaws that are already in our educational system. Because in reality, when they're teaching you facts, it's basically relatively unimportant, right? A lot of the facts that get taught in school aren't all that important, because if you did need them, you could just look them up. Some things you should know. I mean, there's obviously like a basis of general knowledge that you should have. But then also certain things, like certain mathematical operations, if you can do them with a calculator, then I don't see why you would necessarily need to be able to do them by hand. I think school needs to focus a lot more on sort of more high concept stuff that you can't just look up, right? They need to.
What do you mean?
They need to teach you how to acquire knowledge, right? How to verify your sources, and that kind of goes back to the initial question, right? Like, how do you, like, what is a reliable source? How can you identify what a reliable source is? You know, what are logical fallacies that someone might employ to try to convince you of something that isn't true? And those sort of things, right, I think are much more important than just knowing some facts. Because again, facts can always be acquired. If you know how to acquire them reliably and safely in a way, as in without being led astray, then the literal facts aren't nearly as important. That's also why something that always bugged me about a lot of science classes, where they'll teach you a lot of scientific facts, but they don't really, oftentimes they don't really go that in depth on, like, how do we find that out? Or how do we generally find out? Like, we had, like, I think one lesson about the scientific method, and they basically just named the steps, and then that was it. And it's like, that's the most important part about all of science.
Yes, 100%. And what's crazy is how, but now you have to look at it as what direction in life are you taking? Like, the only part that I think I can remember from the scientific method is come up with a hypothesis. Do you know the steps?
I don't know exactly, but the idea usually is that you come up with an hypothesis, then you come up with an idea of how you can test that hypothesis, and then you basically do the test, and then you look at the results and see, you come up with the test, you come up with what you think will happen if you do the test, and then you compare your actual results when you run the test to your hypothetical outcomes, and then you evaluate your theory. And then the big thing that happens oftentimes is, once you have an idea that is like somewhat crystallized out, then the general thing that's done in science is that you try to disprove it, right? You have an idea that you think is true, you try basically everything in your power to disprove it, and not just one person, of course, because subconscious bias and blah, blah, blah. So with actual science, you have other people also try to disprove it, and the longer you can't disprove it, the more likely it becomes to be true, right? And so you want to come up with a disprovable hypothesis, and then you want to test it, and then you want to keep testing it, basically.
100%. Now, does that take away, add social media into that equation? Like, hey, I don't need to do a hypothesis because I can just Google what I'm researching, and it's already been done. Literally, there's nothing new under the sun.
Well, I mean,
so if I have
you're probably in your private life not applying the scientific method that much to things that we've already found out. I mean, obviously, in some ways you can do that, and it's oftentimes good, like if someone makes a claim, to try to verify it in some way or another, and obviously testing it in some cases can be a valid way of doing it, although I wouldn't recommend to microwave your phone. But, you know, there are things like that, but the reason why the scientific method is important on like a grander scale is to try to figure out things that we don't have the answer for yet, right? And so that's...
So you're speaking of things that aren't available on Google or aren't available on...
The way the scientific method gets used, like with actual scientists, is working on thus far unsolved problems, answering thus far unanswered questions, and testing thus far untested or not sufficiently tested hypotheses.
100%. And like, I kind of want to retract my statement about saying there's nothing new under the sun, because, you know, we just had a worldwide pandemic. Imagine how many scientists had to come together and say, okay, what is this? How did this happen? How does it, you know, spread? What do we need to do to stop it to spread? Like, they had to use the scientific method to control that, you know, and to figure out, this is a problem. What do we do to fix this problem? and how do we get it out to the people? So yes, I can understand when you're saying when it's something new or something that you can't easily Google. But how often does that happen? I mean, let's just be honest. When you were in 10th grade, yes, I mean there are the exceptions out there, but when you were in 10th grade, that's when your hormones are kicking in, you're going through puberty, and you got a science test that you need to study for. And here's your study guide. And literally you see the questions that are going to be on the test. So you just Google them, you memorize them, and I could say that could be a form of cheating like we did back in the day, but you'd have to find some creative way to write it. Nowadays, you could just pull your phone up. So to a child or a kid, whatever, an adult, you can even use this for an adult situation. Someone who's like working on an oil rig. That's one of the most dangerous jobs. If they have a question and might be too afraid to ask a coworker or their lead person, let me just Google it instead of actually going through the actual experience to say, hey, if you touch that hot iron, you're going to get burned. But you get what I'm saying here versus saying, hey, if I touch this, will I get burned? Oh, okay, I know not to do it. It's like you have to kind of have your own experiences.
I mean, yeah, obviously, and to some degree that will happen no matter how much you Google things, right? Because you do still end up living life, right? I mean, we both have access to technology in our daily lives and we still experience new things, right? So for the test taking part especially, I think, first of all, in studying for the test, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to use the internet, right? And then during a test, obviously
let me stop you there. When you were a kid, were you able to use the internet during a test?
Not during a test, I said studying for the test.
Okay, studying. Were you able to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you're younger than me though. So
I was born in 98. Also, it doesn't matter if previous generations were able to do it, right? When studying, you should have any and all resources that you want available, because what does it matter? And then
I agree.
The main problem is, obviously, during a test, you can't use the internet, unless it's a test that is specifically designed for that. But the point is, I think, a lot of our test taking is also very flawed, right? Because certain types of test questions are kind of stupid, right? Like, how useful is it, like, if I have a history lesson, to then ask me, like, if I recall all the dates that were mentioned, for example? Like, I agree. Not only am I never going to need that information, but also, even for what history can teach us, it's not that practical, right? Knowing what happened is much more important than when exactly it happened and what the guy's name is.
When it happened. Yeah. Like the Pythagorean theory. You as an adult, have you ever used that? Be honest. Have you ever? No, you haven't. You haven't. You haven't. No, you haven't.
I'm in college studying computer science.
No. Yes, but as am I. I have a degree as well, and I've never used the Pythagorean theory. And neither of you. Go ahead and lie. Let me hear this. Go ahead.
In daily life, I don't think I have used it. I've used it for college stuff, but that's kind of obviously the extension of the education system. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I can't think of a time that I've used it, but I do find it generally to not necessarily be the least useful thing to know, but also, if you did... Okay, this is one of those things where, like, in theory you could look it up, but in practice you need to know that there is a calculation for that, and if you don't know what it's called, then it's not exactly going to be easy to look up, like, oh, how do I calculate this length or something?
Yeah. I don't think I've used it. Okay. Yeah. You're not just saying that for the camera, JJ. Come on, this is Hollywood you're talking to. You're not just saying that for the camera?
What am I saying?
That you have used the Pythagorean theory? Come on now.
I said I have.
Like, I will say 90.
I have said I have not used it outside of college. Or a school before.
I will say 90% of the people that are watching this right now have not had to use that. And we're in class and we're taught about the Pythagorean theory for 2 months. You wasted 2 months over something that 90% of the people aren't going to use. And when we could have been taught, like, other things, like you said, it's not important to know about the day when this happened, but what happened on that day. And we could go down an educational rabbit hole right here if we wanted to, because, again, my mom being in the school system. So social media, I think, is necessary, 100%. I think it's one of the greatest inventions of mankind, 100%. Now, if we look at over there in Germany, you guys call it university. I think we call it here college.
Yeah, I mean, I usually say college when I'm speaking English, but yeah, I get the idea.
So, okay, in college, and this is from my mother. Shout out, my mom's 6, and she's been in the education system for over 30 years. Now, I'm not going to say that college is a scam, but she's like, if you're not going to college to be a doctor, a lawyer, a physicist, a quantum physicist, something, you know what I mean? Like, what's the point of going to college for? Listen, I have been to college. And yes, because I am a YouTuber, and I'm in front of a computer, so my computer science minor in audio engineering does work out with me making music. But if you're not, like, if you want to go to be a marine biologist, to me, the best thing to do is, like we said earlier, use the internet. Go get on-the-job experience and see what it's like to hang out with the penguin. Oh, well, what do penguins eat? They like this. Okay, cool. So the first day on the job, you've Googled, you've done your research. Like you said, it's okay to do research when you're about to approach something. But is it really necessary to go to college to be a welder? Like, hey, I want to learn how to well, you go. I mean, I guess that would be a trade school, but you get what I'm saying. Unless you're going to be like a doctor, a lawyer, a physicist, and anything that doesn't deal with like the common hands-on work. You get what I'm saying? Like, why? Because I don't know how it is in Germany, but over here you're gonna be up to your neck in student loans. Your books are gonna cost money, and probably you're not going to use the degree that you got. And you're probably going to be interested in something because you're interested in something different that you went to college for. Because when you went to college, you were young, you were still impressionable. You probably were partying, had a girlfriend. But then when you turn 25, you're like, man, I was really into engineering. But I mean, now I just want to go lay concrete outside. So you've literally wasted 4 years of your life on engineering. And it's good to have that information because you could potentially be a better concrete layer and come up with a better way of doing it. When in all reality, you could have just been like, hey, I'll take this 4 years and just apply to what I think I want to do instead of me forcing me to do something that I'm told that my parents want to do. And also, I'll say this, I don't have kids, but unless my child wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, a physicist, what have you, etc. What I would do is say, hey, what do you want to go? What do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to let you travel the world, go to London, go to Sweden, go to Finland, go to Denmark, go to China, go to Japan, get a first-hand experience versus just looking at your phone every day and looking at your 27 friends or your 100 friends and seeing what they are doing in your local community. Travel, and I may be all over the place here, but I'm pretty sure you get where I'm going here as far as do you really need college for a lot of these things?
I think there's a couple things to be said about college, and the first one is, I think for those that want to go to college, it can be a worthwhile experience, even if you don't end up using the direct knowledge from your degree. The second thing is that if I was an American, I would not go to college because it's stupid expensive there, right? But
wait, hold on now. We got to go on this rabbit hole. What do you mean? Is college free there?
So the university I go to charges, I think at this point the price has gone up since I started, but charges about $300, 300 euros, but it's roughly 1-to-1 anyways these days. $300 per semester.
Do they charge you guys for books? Because books are very expensive.
We never had to buy any books at all. We never needed. I mean, to be fair, it's computer science, so we're generally very technically oriented, but we do have a library where you can borrow books if you need some books for like a limited time. But
borrow? You can borrow books?
That's how libraries work.
No, well, yes, obviously that's how libraries work, but over here you can't. When I took computer science, I could not enter the class unless I paid for a $200 book. And then, yeah, you get your money back if it's in good condition. There's no writing when you turn it in at the end of the semester. But maybe I'm just speaking from an American point of view when it comes to college, university.
I think that idea that like the professor like released the book and now that they're forcibly selling it to all of their students is kind of a very American concept. I have never encountered that. I know that when we were in like what you would consider middle school / high school, we had to usually buy one book per year, but it was like a generic book that was like released by a book publisher and it usually cost like $20 at most. So, and that was like, again, it was like, I think it was required by like, the school would give you all of like books for every subject except one that you had to buy. I don't know why they decided that was the way they were gonna do it, but that's the way they were doing it. And then usually it was basically the same book for like every year anyway. So usually you would just like talk to like the people that were like one class up and be like, hey, you still got your book from last year, and then just buy from them.
Exactly. Yeah, you pick and choose off of your friends. Also, there are websites, going back to the social media thing here. They're like, and yes, I think you can relate on this because even though you're a lot younger than me, but there are websites, like let's say you have to write a thesis on heart surgery because you want to be a heart surgeon. There are websites that you can go to. I don't want to give out the website's name because I don't agree with it, to be honest with you. But there are websites where you can go and say, it's like you can type in heart surgery and give it a few keywords, and it will literally write up a 14, however many pages you want, however many words you want. It'll write it up with no plagiarism, and you can turn that in. Versus when me and you had to do it, I have to look this stuff up. I have to know, okay, this is this, and physically write these things. Versus now you can just type in words, copy paste, put it in, print it, and you're good to go. So, like, in my opinion, I think that takes away from the, you know what I mean, the hard work.
I mean, that is obviously a bullshit thing to do, but the way it works, the university I go to, the way it works is that if you have to write like something like a bachelor's thesis or like a master's thesis, is that you have something that they call a defense. So basically, you go there, like the prof has read your entire thesis, and then they ask you questions. Not literally just like what are the words in it, but also like, like they'll ask like, oh yeah, how did you come up with that piece of information? Like how did you come to that conclusion? That sort of stuff. And so you have to know what's in your thesis, right? So even if you had someone else write it for you, you would still basically have to study up on what it's about. At that point, you might as well write it yourself.
Well, this is in your country though.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be a problem, right? If your universities don't have a system that protects against ghostwriting, which was always historically a problem, I think, where like people would just hire someone else who had already gotten the degree to write their papers for them, right? So it's not. So while technology makes it easier, it's still not exactly a new problem. And
yeah, and it doesn't make it right either. It doesn't necessarily make it right. Also, so let's ask you this question. Let's say you needed heart surgery, and you've got one heart surgeon that has done every thesis, every book report, that they physically went to each book, wrote it down, they knew about it, they didn't look at the internet at all, versus another surgeon that copied and pasted and used certain websites to become a heart surgeon. They're both heart surgeons. Which heart surgeon are you going to choose to work on? Are you going to choose the one that copy and pasted, that got the same degree? Or are you going to use the one that actually did the hands-on experience?
I mean, realistically, you wouldn't know, but I guess, yeah, obviously, the more invested they were in their studies, the better they probably are. But realistically, what matters most
That's my point.
Is probably practical experience. I think...
That's my point.
Right? Like, not just, like, how much time do you spend with a book, but, like, how much stuff do you spend in people's rib cages, right? Like, that is what I really want to know.
Yeah.
Like, the awkward thing is, obviously, someone has to be the first heart that you operate on, but also, I don't want to be that guy, right? Like, imagine you're, like, laying in the surgery theater, and they're, like, just putting you under, and the surgeon comes in, and like, okay, let's see how this is done. It's like,
oh my god, dude, could you imagine? I don't know. But I mean, it's just some...
There are still advantages because being able to watch a video of someone else performing the surgery, I mean, obviously, you're presumably going to assist in the surgery before you do it yourself anyways, but being able to watch a video of it is still going to be more useful than like being able to look at some pictures in a book, right? So there are still advantages to the internet and how that can aid, for example, surgeons, and especially also if you, for example, need to do a surgery for whatever reason as a doctor, and maybe you haven't done that kind of surgery in a while, having a resource where you can, like, refresh your mind on how it's done could still be very useful. So I think there are still pros to it, even if could be some cons.
Yes, but so to answer the question that I asked, is you would take the one that had the most hands-on experience.
Yeah, obviously.
Right? That's just where I'm going. And that we can go back. Go ahead, sorry.
And I was going to say, I think that seems like a good point to like put a pause on this. We're going to come back to this in the second topic, and let's move on to facts and songs because we said we didn't want to go for all too long. And what is your fact of the week?
Okay, I don't need. Listen, this is more of a. I guess you could call it a fact, but it's very interesting. So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, as you guys can obviously tell. But this is a fact. But we have a city called In Between, Georgia. Okay. So you have In Between. It's like Atlanta, Georgia. Now you have In Between, Georgia. Then we have a city right next to it called Cummings, Georgia. Cummings. Now the town before Cummings is called Butts County, and it's crazy when you're on the phone with someone. They're like, "Hey, where you at?" "Oh, I'm in between Butts and Cummings." That is crazy to me. Like, you can't tell me that no one thought of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a little like. And me and Smokey joke about it all the time. It's like, yeah, I'm in Butts in between Cumming, or I'm in between Butts and Cumming. You know, it's a crazy fact, but I mean, it's hilarious. But I don't know. I thought that'd be interesting.
That is always one of those fun ones. I mean, place names are often hilarious. I mean, not to the point where you would encounter it on a daily basis necessarily, but yeah, there are a lot of fun place names. I remember there was, I saw a Google Maps screenshot where there was a place where it was like, this street, that street, and the other street. And it's just like, try describing where you have to go. Right? Yeah. Place names are fun.
Yeah. I don't know. And I know there are some very interesting ones in Germany as well. I've heard.
Yeah, also, obviously, what becomes even more funny is whenever you just have, like, those cross-linguistic things where it's like, oh yeah, we have a town in Germany that has, like, a completely innocent name, but, like, in English it sounds like an explicative or something like that. Although there are enough place names in Germany that also sound funny in German, but...
So, real quick, before we get on to your fact of the week, tell me if this is true or not, but, I've been talking to someone that's fluent in German, and I guess it's okay. Can we curse? Is that
sure.
Okay to curse?
Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a German word that's foot. Does that mean something over there? Foot. Like,
what? Did you say foot?
I don't want to. It's a foot. It's like the C word of a female's body part. Foot. Is that true? Like, your foot is. It's a derogatory term for a female's private part. I don't want to say the C word, but it's foot. Is that true? You know what I'm talking about?
I've never heard that.
I'm gonna type it in chat. I just typed it in chat.
Yeah, one second, I need to pull up Discord on my browser because I can't minimize your... well, I could, but I don't want to minimize your camera for appearance's sake.
Yeah, appearance.
So, let's see, what did you... So, yeah, no, I mean, I know what you're talking about, but, like, I understand the words you're saying, but I don't know what you're getting at. Like, it seems to me like you might be misinformed.
Okay, so we were talking about feet, and in the South, we say, hey, my grandma would say, oh, my foot, or my foot, plural, my foot's hurt. And foots, and it's because this person that I'm speaking to is fluent in Germany, so when it says, hey, my foot's hurt, it's in the German language, it's like, oh, wait, that's a derogatory word. You know what I mean?
That might be a word in a local dialect somewhere. It sounds like it could be a German word, but I personally haven't heard it. But again, like, there is, for, like, colloquialisms especially, obviously, inherently kind of colloquialisms, yes, and those sort of more vulgar words do, of course, also vary regionally quite a bit. So...
Yes, and I can see where you're going there as well, because the colloquialisms between the northern part of the United States and the southern parts are totally different. So I know Germany's very... like you got Austria right there, so and also I heard that you guys can, like, what part of Germany are you in, if you don't mind asking?
I'm in North Rhine-Westphalia. I'm relatively I'm actually relatively central in general, but like slightly west. So like north-south wise I'm relatively central, but then so it's sort of like I don't know, 3/4 of the way west. Like, I'm near Cologne.
So how far? Okay, so you're near Cologne. All right, so how far is Berlin from you?
I don't know how far. I mean, I think it's also pretty... I think it's just more or less due east. I wouldn't be able to tell you how far, though. I'm bad with distances.
So Yeah, I've heard that like where you live in Germany, you could also travel an hour away and still be in Germany, but it'd be a completely different dialect, and you guys have a completely different accent.
Um,
Is that true? Because that's the thing here in the States, you know.
Certainly. I mean, there are some. It's kind of interesting, especially if you're not used to it. Certain dialects can certainly be difficult, right? So you got certain Austrian dialects are certainly very difficult, but also like just strong Bavarian dialects, for example, are also something that I would personally struggle with. Um, I think the dialects in Saxony are more so just that we make fun of them, less than that they're necessarily that difficult to understand, although they have some expressions. They have like, some weird thing about how they tell time, where they'll be like quarter two, and that then just... Well, I think they say quarter two, and that means quarter to two, but that makes more sense in English because the Brits, I think, say it similarly, but like some weird expressions where it's just... But like, most places in Germany, unless you get into like colloquial expressions, just like regular conversation, you could communicate fairly well with one another. And even in areas where the dialects would be a problem, usually people can speak with like a reduced dialect so that they can be understood, right? So that is that was an interesting thing when we were on a class trip in Austria. We were like in a supermarket, and we were waiting in line, like me and some friends. I think it was like Alex and one or two other people. And the cashier in front of us was talking to another customer, and I was like, "Oh shit, I can't understand a word she's saying." Right, and they're just speaking Austrian German, right?
Was it because of the dialect though, or the dialect?
Yeah, and so I'm like, "Oh shit, like this is gonna be difficult, right? Because we gotta have to talk to her next because we gotta pay for our shit." And then we come up, and she like speaks perfectly clean German. I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Wow.
I mean, to be fair, right? Like we were there on like a skiing trip with our school, so it's like they probably get a lot of tourists in the area, especially from Germany. So like they'll know how to communicate with people, but it's one of those things where it's like
they adapt.
Yeah, it's like it's called code switching, right? You probably don't talk the same way to your friends as you do to, for example, your boss, and that is still in the same area. And then if you were to talk to a Brit, you would probably also not necessarily lean into the whole Southern thing as much. You would speak probably still American English, but in a more neutral form.
Exactly. And, you know, me being biracial, half black, half white, when I'm with the black side of my family, yes, exactly. When I'm with the black side of my family, I can speak that. But when I'm with the white side of my family, I have a totally different, way of speaking.
Yeah, of course, the way that black people tend to talk in America is known professionally as African American vernacular English. I believe you just generally call it Ebonics, but
Ebonics, I guess you'd say, yes.
But yeah, so that is definitely also one of those things where, I can see how that is very different from, how that is certainly different from standard American English, and then also, again, most black people in America will be able to also speak a quote-unquote more proper English, although, of course, practically there's no reason why one is more proper than the other, and also people misunderstand AAV oftentimes because certain features that seem like they're simpler are actually much more complicated for reasons, blah, blah.
Exactly. Now take those same Ebonics that's coming from, a black person in the South and try to use that on an English-speaking person from London. They probably ain't gonna understand not much what you're saying.
And let's not even try speaking to Scottish people because, no.
Why?
No, I mean, have you heard like very thick Scottish accents?
My grandmother is an immigrant from Ireland. Yes, it's not Scottish, but very similar.
Irish accents are also, but I think the Scottish are even worse sometimes. But like, if they like speak with like a strong Scottish accent, it's an oversimplification. I'm sure there are multiple accents in Scotland, but like, you could barely understand what they're saying. Although generally,
dude, listen,
most accents, if they
again, like I said, my grandma being an immigrant from Ireland, when she's grandma might be 78, 79 now, but when she starts to drink, and she still has that very strong, dude, you can't understand a word. I mean, you just like, all right, grandma, okay, all right. Like, you just agree. You just don't even know what she's saying.
Just nod and smile.
It's interesting. Yeah, just nod and smile, exactly.
And I think it's probably time, given that this is the Fact of the Week segment, for me to actually talk about my Fact of the Week, because we haven't actually gotten there yet. We kind of
I'm sorry about that.
I mean, hey, no problem. This is, after all, a show about talking. I almost said it's a talk show, but it's,
Yeah.
I guess, broad, but it's a unscripted podcast. We talk about whatever comes to mind, but we do have a structure, and my fact of the week is about, this is maybe a controversial topic, but I think we can handle it. The COVID vaccine. There has been recently a study done that shows...
Oh, Lord, you did not go to Corona. No, you didn't. Go ahead.
That recent studies have shown that the vaccine for the coronavirus can, in fact, affect women's periods. Now, there had been reports about that earlier, like anecdotally, but apparently there have been statistics that periods can be delayed by a day or two on their first cycle after getting the vaccine. Normally, after the first cycle afterwards, that then resets to normal. So there is no long-term effect, but like immediately after, it can affect your body. Now, it's been hypothesized as about stress or about just generally, because there's a lot of factors that can affect it, so it's not that crazy, but it's something that had been reported on before and that has now been officially scientifically verified. I have also heard reports, although this has not necessarily been done any statistical analysis on, that getting COVID can have much stronger impacts on periods as well. So it's not that like you shouldn't take the vaccine because of this, but it is definitely something that I thought was interesting when I read about it and I wanted to bring up.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. This is the fact of the week. Is this a fact?
So there has been a scientific study done very recently that has shown, analyzing cycle tracking app data, that women that have gotten the vaccine have gotten, I believe, their period delayed by on average a day on their first cycle after they gotten the shot. So it's not dramatic, but it is a fact.
Really? That's so crazy, because I have spoken to some female friends and that have been, fully vaccinated and boosted. And two common things that I hear from my friends that are female and have been fully vaxxed and boosted, they say that they feel like their hair is brittle, or like it comes out more, or like they shed more. And a woman with long hair, there's going to be hair everywhere if you know what I mean. But also so the hair is one thing that they say that they've noticed when being vaxxed and boosted, and also the period. They say that sometimes it's extremely late, or sometimes it's extremely early, and then sometimes it's like extremely heavy when normally they've had a consistent period throughout their entire life. It's like, I can see where that might.
So I haven't heard anything about hair, but then again, I can only speak to what has been actually looked at, because obviously anecdotal things can always have a variety of reasons that individual cases are always tough to analyze, because obviously once you have the aggregate data, you can really see that there can't be a separate factor, but it's possible. I'm not a woman. I do have long hair. I haven't noticed anything. I'm double vaccinated and boosted. I haven't noticed anything about my hair. I can't speak towards periods.
You've been vaxxed though, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, well, again, we don't know. We're not freaking the person that studies diseases. What do they call it?
Virologist, if it's a viral disease.
Yes, a viral disease. So we're not virologists. So with it may be something to where, again, I'm just speaking out of turn here. I have no clue what I'm talking about. But because me and you have the XY chromosome, maybe it doesn't really affect, and maybe it does affect us in some way that we just haven't found yet. But maybe it's with the periods, like you were speaking earlier, when someone has the XX chromosome, maybe the vaccination does have some sort of play there when it comes to your menstrual.
Well, I would generally assume that it doesn't literally have something to do with chromosomes, for the reason that in practical terms, in day-to-day things, your chromosomes don't really matter as much. It's usually more about hormones and stuff like that, which of course is in turn indirectly affected by...
No. You just said that you're not a woman, so you have the XY chromosome, which means you do not have a period. Maybe it has some...
I have never been tested. It is possible, in theory, to have XX chromosomes and be born physically male. If, for example, your body, for some reason or another, produces more testosterone than it should, or if your testosterone receptors are more sensitive than they should be. And inversely, which I think is more common, but neither of those is incredibly common, to be born with XY chromosomes and still come out effectively female, or, well, you know what I mean. Because either your testosterone receptors were just not very receptive, they were blocked, or they were damaged and not produced properly, or you just happen to not produce as much testosterone as would normally be expected. So it's not technically directly tied to the chromosomes. It's just that generally the chromosomes tell you to produce the hormones, and the hormones tell your body what to do. And so there is a general correlation, but it's not 100%.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate here because, you call this a fact of the week. I'd be willing to know, like, when you say a fact, like, I'd be willing, and, like, does this take place with 100% of women that have periods? Or is it just 80%?
So the delays in the periods, I think, were on average 1 day. So there is a delay. I think they said as much as 8 days had been observed. But I believe there have then also been some that have, presumably there have been some that have not been affected. And so what I have only seen is, again, the average of the aggregate data. So I cannot speak to the individual number that I've taken. I would have to look at the data. I would have to look at the original study, which I don't have in front of me at the moment.
I'd be curious to know before, and I'm not saying your fact is not a fact, but I would like to know, is it 100% of women, 100% that have been vaccinated that have experienced this with the period? And if that's the case, then yes, that's a fact. But if it's only
there has
70%.
I haven't said that every woman experiences it. I've just said that there has been a study that shows that on average that has happened. I'm not saying it affects everyone, and so it still is.
Okay, I got you.
What I said, to the best of my knowledge and belief, is factual. That doesn't necessarily mean that it affects everyone. So yeah,
I got you. This is why this is awesome, JJ. This is why we can sit here and talk, just go back and forth, man. We have good debates, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we might be able to have some debates about is whether certain things are in fact appealing or not, and more precisely, would we press the button? This is a game that is like Would You Rather, but this is Will You Press the Button? That's what it's called. And the idea is, if you press the button, something good happens and something bad happens. And so the idea is, would you press the button? So rather than choosing either or, we're choosing just, would you want this combination of things to happen or not? You get the power to read minds, but you can't turn it off or tune out other people's thoughts. Basically the question is, do you want to know what people are thinking? Always.
Okay, it's hard for me to read on my screen. Can you read it back to me again?
You get the power to read minds, but you cannot turn it off or tune out other people's thoughts.
Do not push the button.
And also make this...
Do not.
I will also not, because I'm not even sure if I would want it without the downside, because being able to read people's minds, first of all, it's an invasion of privacy that just... There are a bunch of ethical questions about that. But then... So, having the ability to do it then will tempt you to actually use it. But not being able to turn it off is just all around bad.
Yes.
Also,
and coming from someone with severe anxiety who overthinks everything, and like you said, even taking the negative part, even just being able to read someone's mind, the way I know my mind works is like, okay, because let's be serious. Some people, they put on a front, they put on a smile that maybe that smile isn't true, but if you really like, this person might be saying, "Oh, good to see you," but in their head they're like, "Get the hell out of my face right now." That?
What he's saying is he does not want to be here. He just acts like it.
Exactly. I don't know if I want
that. Yeah. So the majority of people agreed with us, although just narrowly. It's 53% that didn't want the power, despite the downside. Will you press the button? You'll never have to deal with pop ads or any ads again online or on television. I don't know, but I guess I mean pop-ups.
Ooh, okay.
But your chances of getting computer viruses increased by 20%.
Damn, that's a good one, JJ. That's a good one, dude.
I feel like it comes up to one simple question from me. What do you mean increasing by 20%? Do you mean absolute by 20 percentage points? Or by 20%?
Bro, you just took the words out of my mouth. You just took the words out of my mouth. Wow, because it's so vital of what me and you do, we have to have that. We have to have our computer, and viruses are not good. So I will not push the button.
So if it's 20% more relative to what it currently is, the odds, right? So if currently the odds of getting a computer virus is 1%, and it becomes 1.2%, I feel totally comfortable with that, right? Because it's probably less than 1% in any given situation, because a lot of the security built into computers has gotten a lot better. If it's 20 percentage points, then obviously, no, this is a no. But if it's 20% relative, I would actually press the button.
I think I'm actually gonna post this as a poll on the YouTube on my YouTube channel just to see what the trash talkers think. But go ahead, let's see what are the results. I will not.
Yeah, I mean, I will. I just press it because we have to pick one of the two to progress. 62% of people did not. 38% of people did. But again, this really depends on how you interpret the second part.
Yes, exactly, and that's the big determining factor. I'm curious to see how, like, are there going to be any that actually say, like, I want to see one that says, "Hey, that's going to make Hollywood say yes, I will push the button." I want to see if there's any like that.
The comments are mostly just spam.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely pose the question, see what people think.
Yeah.
Will you press the button? You know for a guaranteed fact what comes after death, but you can't tell anyone, or you die without them understanding you.
You know for a guaranteed fact what comes after death, but I can't tell anyone, or you die without them understanding.
I mean, it's basically you can't tell anyone. The part about, like, it's basically just like, what is it, Cassandra from Greek mythology.
Yes, I would push the button. I would. Because damn it, do I want to push? Yes, I'll push it. Push that damn button.
I think I would push it too, because at the end of the day, you're
going to die.
Not being able to tell someone doesn't really matter, because right now I can't tell you either because I don't know, right? So
right.
I wouldn't expect my current perception of the lack of an afterlife to be changed by that, because obviously I believe what I believe for a reason. So, well, actually, it's not that obvious, but so.
Oh yeah! Wow, most people did push the button.
Yeah, 70%.
Interesting. What you got?
The most perfect lover you could ever imagine falls in love with you, but they live in a place that you cannot get to, so you can only message each other for 2 years before you both can meet.
Wow, I have been in this situation, and something similar is happening with this similar situation. Okay. So, I can't read the second part. Read the second part to me again.
They live in a place that you cannot get to, so you can only message each other for 2 years before you both can meet.
I will push that button. I'll push it. Because if I know it's the perfect lover, if I know that this person is 100% for me, and I am 100% for that person, then I think it's okay to wait 2 years with messages and video calls, especially with the social media we have today. I would push this.
I mean, that I definitely agree with. I mean, the one question that I would have, and it's probably just a minor hang-up for me, is the sort of and this is a bit more philosophical, but the implication, like, is me pressing the button changing someone's feelings so that they now love me, where they maybe previously would not have? And how will I feel about that? First of all, morally, is that okay? And then second of all, is that always going to be in the back of my mind whenever I see that person in the future, right? It's like, oh yeah, you only love me because I made you, right? Like, that seems like a terrible basis of a relationship.
Dude, you remember the last podcast we did? I love you so much, dude. You're a brother to me, you're a fellow trash talker, but god dang, you deeply analyze things. The question is would you rather push, like, just like, I get the morality of it, but what's the question, dude? I guarantee, exactly. I knew it was going to be more people that pushed that button.
Yeah. I mean, the main question for me, if other people push the button, I guess, is mostly just maybe some people that are already in a relationship wouldn't press the button because they're like, I already got my person.
Right.
So that's the main reason why I think people wouldn't push it. You have access to an infinite amount of money, but you can never share it with anyone else, including presents.
So I have an access to an infinite amount of money, but you can never share it with anyone else, including presents.
As in, the idea is not only
I
can you
got
not
you.
give
I
people
got you.
money, but you also can't give them gifts from that money.
Okay, so damn it, I just criticized you on this, but now I have to play some sort of. Now I have to like deeply analyze. I just got you on this. Okay, now what I could do is say, yes, I'll have the infinite amount of money, and I'll just build whatever I want, and just say, hey, come spend the night, and just so you stay on, and I'll buy whatever car I like. Hey, sure, it's technically not giving you a present. It's technically not spending money on you. It's me spending the money on myself, and you just have access to those things.
That is one thing.
So
I was wondering about the other thing is you can never share it, right? But so what if I still live my life like a normal person and I earn money, but anything I spend on myself, I only spend from the infinite amount of money, and then whenever I want to give someone a gift, can I still buy it from my earned money? Because then I need to earn a lot less money for being able to still help people much more than I would normally, while still personally having all the money in the world. And then some.
Damn, dude, this is a tough. That takes back on everything what I just said. As far as, hey, I could buy whatever house, whatever car, and you can just use it whenever you want. Technically, that's sharing it, right?
I mean, again, there's so many questions about how this functions that it just becomes very difficult. And again, even if you couldn't do that, which you probably could if you take this very literally, you still have the option of, if you can separately earn money, then you still can literally give all of that money that you earn away, because you don't need any money personally, because you already have all the money.
So this is a tough one for me. I want to say I will not hit the button because I am a selfless person and I want everyone to prosper. But at the same time, if there is some loophole to where I have all the money and like, oh, I just dropped $100,000 on the floor that I completely forgot, and like you just go pick it up. I didn't know. I just dropped it on the floor.
Okay, I think that is, I think, going a little far. I think being able to share things with people is one thing, but being able to literally accidentally leave money, I think that is very clearly more on the gifting angle.
Man, I'm gonna say I will not. Man, god dang, this is a tough one, dude.
Again, I think as long as I can still gift people things from earned money, I would press the button, because at that point, there is no downside, effectively, because I can still give people gifts as I would otherwise, and then some, if I earn money, while also being able to use all the infinite money for myself, so I don't see a downside.
Man, I'm gonna say I will not, because I'm a giver. I want to. God, I can't wait to see the results.
70% of people pressed it. And again, the question becomes how can you circumvent the requirement, right? Oh, God, the first top comment is literally what you said.
What did he say? What did he say?
Just dropping it.
That's what I'm saying. If I just have it and I just happen to drop it, I'm not I didn't say this was for you, but dude, I would have pushed the button now that I think about it. Because if I can drop it, I didn't say this was for you. I didn't tell you this was a gift. I didn't tell you what to spend this on. It's just I have an infinite amount of money. I'm just gonna drop it to someone that I love right within 5 feet of your vicinity.
I mean, I suppose if you wanted to have the maximum amount of impact, you just spend as much money as humanly possible. You ruin the entire economy, and we're all now on the equal playing field.
Lord have mercy. That's a good point, though, dude. That's a good point, though.
I mean, the question is whether or not you'd want to ruin the economy, but if all of a sudden billions of dollars that people have are worthless, then in theory that should lead to more equality, right?
Exactly. No, not necessarily. Because, I guess you're right. Because then the power of the dollar, basically falls. But at the same time, if you have an infinite, the richest person on earth is, who is it? Is it Elon Musk?
Jeff Bezos, I think.
Bezos? Okay, so the richest person on earth, I have more money than him. So if I were to do that and just mess up the economy, that's kind of assholey to be. I mean, you're kind of an asshole because you know what I mean. You're still messing up their pockets.
I mean, first of all, that, and then second of all, they used to I was talking about making the world more equal by basically abolishing the concept of billionaires. But the problem then also is that everyone who used to be a billionaire will still own like a bunch of real estate and shit that no regular person would be able to afford. So realistically, even if we had to reset all of money, basically, which, I'm German, I would know a thing or two about that. But you'd still have people that have things that people that don't.
So, just curious, you didn't necessarily say, would you push it?
Yes, I said I would, because, again, I think there are enough ways around the downside that it really isn't much of a downside, because especially, right, like, how much money can you realistically give people anyways, right, like, in your regular life? So...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Because if I already can't give major gifts to people, it's not going to be much of a change if I now can't give anything of my infinite money, especially if, as I said, I can maybe still just separately earn money that I can then give to people.
Right. Is there a way for you to screenshot this? Because this is the one that I'm putting on the Trash Talkers poll. This is the question.
Sure, I can press win and print. Yep, there we go.
There you go. Awesome. That's definitely going up tonight. And I want you to, that's going to go on the poll tonight. And I want you to see what most of the Trash Talkers will say. That'd be awesome. Do you think most people would agree with what we said, that we would push the button? Well, even though they say 71%.
I mean, presumably, your audience would be representative of the general population in some way, so yes. And also, again, I think people are going to mostly just be talking about, like, all possible different loopholes. It's just going to be all like, oh, this and that, and yeah.
Just like me and you did.
Yeah, I mean, people are predictable, I think. And I think this is also, since we talked about this one for quite a bit, it seems like a good point to end, because otherwise we roll another question and it's going to be something stupid and we're like, oh, great, now we're ending on a downer. Which brings us then back to the continuation of our ongoing discussion from the first topic, with the overarching theme of truth in the age of social media.
Yeah, man, it's... Again, I'll say that social media is one of the greatest things man has created. But at the same time, it can be one of the worst things that human have created. To me, that's just what it boils down to.
I think what people oftentimes point out is that social media allows disinformation to spread very easily. But I think the counterpoint to that is that it also allows the spread of true information to an extent that has never been before seen. And although there have been studies done that show that supposedly misinformation gets spread more easily than truth, there is still value in being able to spread information that I think we cannot really ignore, even if there comes misinformation with it. And I think we just have to learn fundamentally to deal with that misinformation more effectively.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think misinformation is more spread or more popular, more spreaded more than actual truth? Why do you think that is?
I think it's just because you can tailor misinformation to whatever is the most shareable, right? Make it more exciting, make it more aggravating, make it more make it more this, make it more that. Where for the truth, you can try to make it sound more exciting to some degree, but at the end of the day, there's a limit of how far you can go until it's no longer the truth. And so I think that is just a big part of that, where it's like, the most exciting headlines might very well be untrue, because if they were true, they might not be as exciting.
And this is something about me, and I play devil's advocate on everything. I want to see both sides of the story.
Yeah.
So in this case, yes, having the misinformation could be a bad thing. However, it's offering people to think with an open mind, because there have been legitimate conspiracies that have been putting out that were told is 100% truth, and on down the road it's like, we were skeptical of that at first, and now 10-20 years down the road we thought we were crazy, or people called us crazy, but now we were right the whole time. So it does offer a person to have an open mind and not just to do what you're told. 1 + 1 is 2. Well, why does 1 + 1 = 2? And I'm just using that as a small example, but it offers people to think more broadly and think beyond or think outside the box.
Yeah, I think that is true, but you have to you have to be able to evaluate information, because otherwise you might be led to a lot of things that as far as we can tell, just aren't true. And in some cases, things that are blatantly untrue. Do
you remember, I don't know if it was 2014 or 2015, maybe 2016, but one of the most Googled things was flat Earth. And we have enough science and we have enough evidence that the world is round, but that was one of the most Googled. That means more than half of people who had Googled something that was possibly misinformation. You get where I'm going here?
I suppose just Googling the term doesn't necessarily mean that you believe in it, but yeah, there's certainly a concern there, but that is why, again, first of all, I think it's important to be able to evaluate information, and also, secondly, I think, I was going to say something. I had something good.
No, don't you hate when that happens? Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah. I completely blanked on what my big point was going to be. I thought I had...
You were going too deep. That's what it was. You were going to go too deep.
It wasn't even that deep, I think. I think it was just like... I simply do not remember. Right, the open-mindedness, right? You said it allows people to be more open-minded. And I think that is true to some extent, but I think the way a lot of social media sites are programmed with algorithms that are designed to keep you on the site as long as possible at basically any cost can lead to you only being shown things that agree with a certain worldview, because whatever keeps you on the site is what gets shown to you. It usually ends up, first of all, oftentimes adhering to your existing worldview, and then second of all, things tend to become more extreme the longer you stay on, basically. And so that also drives people to extremism. If you start out being like slightly right of center or slightly left of center, and you spend enough time on social media, you basically end up on the extreme edge, at least in theory. Obviously, some people are more susceptible to that than others, and it also depends on how much time you spend, and blah, 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 but that is definitely something that we have to also take into account, where open-mindedness, I think, would be more easily facilitated if the content that was shown to us was, I don't want to say less moderated, because that sounds like there's a person behind it, but it was less organized.
Wait, no, that you just hit the head on the nose on. You just hit the nose on the head right there. Is everything that we're being told, everything that we're being shown, is all controlled by someone, some company, the media. The media. If the media were to say, "Hey, there is a freaking asteroid headed toward Earth, and you have 24 hours to live," and every media broadcast did that on Earth, you are going to think, "Hey, there is a meteor headed to Earth," because you're being told that. Versus you be having an open mind and you're reading some misinformation, when in all actuality the misinformation is actually the correct information, because even though every news outlet is saying, "Hey, an asteroid's going to hit," and they're like, the people that don't believe it's like, "Man, ain't no asteroid going to hit." Everyone else is going in a disarray, like, "Oh, we're going to die within the next 24 hours," and it never happens. Then the misinformation was the right thing. The people with the open mind, like, I don't trust what these people are feeding you. Don't take everything at face value, basically. You know what I mean? Literally, we're the person who controls images is the person that controls mind. You've heard that before.
That is definitely true, but I think the thing that social media certainly offers is that even if you live in a place where the traditional media is very heavily controlled, again, places like, China's difficult because they actually control the internet fairly well as well, but a place like Russia, for example, where basically most media is state media, then having access to social media where you can then see the actual truth is certainly useful, but again, you have to also, they can also go the other way, where people will be led down rabbit holes, and that's how, like, the whole QAnon thing works, for example, where a lot of people that had right-leaning views to begin with were then led to more and more right-leaning sources, and then ended up effectively joining a cult. Not literally. QAnon is not technically a cult because it doesn't meet all the criteria, but certainly led into a lot of fairly outlandish beliefs because they were slowly led in that direction, not by any one person necessarily, but just by the way those algorithms are set up. And that's, in a way, the weirdest part about it, where, you said
100%.
He who controls the images, and at the end of the day, he who controls the images is an algorithm that isn't even designed to show you something with a specific ideology, but rather just whatever keeps you there. And it's like,
just to keep your eyes on their channel.
Yeah,
that is controlling. That is literally. There's a reason it's called a TV program. It's a program to control you to watch. You're programmed to watch this.
I believe it's called a program because the order of shows is programmed into.
I mean, yes, you're right, and this is just a term that some people use. That's why they call it TV programming. Like,
yeah,
why not?
I'm just saying if you keep saying stuff like that, and then someone doesn't know, they might think that it's literal the etymology, and then that confuses people.
Yes, again, this is we're the trash talkers, and we're here to talk trash. This is what we do, you know.
So, but yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that algorithms that again don't have any ideological goals still end up affecting people's ideologies, sort of as collateral damage, effectively, to the site's very aggressive retention strategies. That's kind of wild to me.
Yeah, I'm on your side 100%, man. But I will stand by the fact that the man who controls images controls minds, and I think you would agree with me on that.
I mean, yeah, I think if you do have, at the very least, a large majority control, then that is certainly true. I mean, obviously, and I think you would agree with that as well. If no one controls all of the sources, or most of the sources, then it's going to be very hard to manipulate people that way, which is why social media democratizing information is very good in theory.
We could somehow tie this into the coronavirus, but I'm not going to do it because you know what I want to say, but a lot of people, we could tie this into the coronavirus if we wanted to, you know, like I'm not going to touch much on it, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I honestly know a dozen different places that this could go. I mean, I guess the most common thing that gets spread around the internet about COVID that is we're talking about is anti-vaxxers, which, that's a whole kind of worms.
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, do you remember? Oh God, do you want to go here? Do you want to go here, bro?
I mean, if you want to go there, I'll go there.
Do you not remember when COVID first hit, and there were videos of like people in China that they were walking with, like, I remember watching videos of when Corona first hit, before it even came to America. And they were videos of people in China that were walking, holding their groceries, and would just fall out in the middle of the street. And then these dudes in these hazmat suits would come and pick them up. And it's like, well, that's not really how COVID works, though. I mean, so that means there was a camera there, a camera recording this person, multiple people, because this is multiple videos, a camera to be there to record these people, fall out, and then just so happened a guy in a hazmat suit comes out. Like, now we know that's not how COVID works. So, you know what I mean? It's like, they tried to
I honestly don't remember that. Honestly, the whole COVID thing...
Oh, I'll send you a video.
I mostly heard about when it started hitting the West, and I definitely remember there being a lot of skepticism at the time about just in general the severity of it, which I don't think is entirely unreasonable when something like that first hits, because I feel like every time a new disease
it first hits.
Every time a new disease comes around, everyone's like, oh my god, this is gonna be a huge pandemic. And it's like 90% of the time it's nothing. And
right, I mean that's my thing though. It's like I'll send you videos when we get done with this, but there are videos of when it first hit where they're like, I vividly remember a lady walking, falling down in the street, and like these guys pull up in this truck with these big hazmat
suits.
Hazmat suits, yeah. Like, so you had a camera at the perfect time, at the perfect person, and just so happened to like it was almost like it was pushed. Like, you gotta, and then as time went on, it's like it's not really how it works. But like you said,
I mean,
is that misinformation?
It is,
because the media pushed those things?
It is very... I don't know the specific case that you're talking about, but I do know that it's very common for people to misattribute things. That's, I think, one of the very common ways to deceive. Where it's like, you see a video that's about one thing, and then someone just says it's about another thing, and then that's not the case. Right? There was... I remember when the Russia's most recent invasion to Ukraine started happening. At first, there was a bunch of footage where people were like, oh yeah, like, footage from Ukraine. It's like, it ends up being from a completely different war that happened like 5 years ago. And it's like, yeah, so it's misattributed footage. And then, of course, there was also the whole Ghost of Kiev thing where they were literally like taking video game footage and were claiming that it was from the war. So,
but the footage that you were talking about that was from like 5 years ago, is that misinformation because the media were putting it out there? Does that mean the media was spreading misinformation?
If you attribute it to that war, then it is misinformation, yes. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a big thing in the media specifically, but I've definitely seen that on the internet a lot, where there was a lot of footage when Russia, like in February, when they first, well, I don't want to say first invaded Ukraine, because they first invaded Ukraine, well, in recent times in 2014, but there was a lot of footage going around that just wasn't from that, and people were saying it was from that, and saying it was from that is definitely misinformation, but I guess the footage itself is not inherently misinformation if it is something that actually happened. It's just the attribution kind of makes it misinformation.
I think we're saying the same thing. We're on the same page, or just on a different page. That's what I think.
Do you have anything else you wanted to say about this topic before we close it out?
I think we covered a lot, dude. This was fun, man. This was interesting. I enjoy coming on here talking to you, JJ. So I feel like I'm speaking to a brother, bro. So
because then we can do something that I know you've been looking forward to for a while. We can talk about our songs of the week. Why is it playing?
Song of the week, yeah. I love this. It's cold. It's cold. That's so awesome. Hey, when I lost that butter, everything changed. That is the greatest thing ever, dude.
Technically, that wasn't meant to start playing until after you announced it, but here we go. That's Hollywood Song of the Week. I apparently forgot to disable that source.
Yes, I want to say the person and I want to give credit to the channel. I want to say the YouTube channel it's so Yoho. I think that's correct.
I think it's something like that. I think the video says as the credit for it says Songify This, which I guess is the series name or something.
Yes, but the channel name is the guy. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying because that's probably easier for people to search, because there's no way you can tell people how to spell the channel name unless you actually show it on screen.
Listen, the easiest way to find this is just type "It's Corn." It's one of the most viral things on the internet right now. Yeah, but I heard it this morning, and go ahead.
I remember hearing about it a couple days ago, like when the interview that this is like remixed from, like was first released, I guess, when like the internet was going wild over this. I like vaguely saw that was going on, and I still don't quite get it. I mean, I get it. The kid is very enthusiastic about corn, but like come
on, JJ, stop analyzing so much. Just enjoy the content, dude. It's this cute little kid who is having the greatest time of his life over freaking corn. Like, it's corn. It's the greatest thing ever. When I put butter on it, it's amazing. That's the humor in it. It goes no deeper than that. It's just a cute kid that enjoys, and what makes it even cuter, he doesn't say corn. It's corn. Like, that's awesome, dude.
I don't know.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've never
go ahead and break it down somehow.
Like every time there's like a funny video involving a kid, like they usually don't get me. Like even animal videos, I'm not that into. It's just, I don't know. It's just not my thing.
It's just funny as how he's saying it's cone. Yeah, and just into that's like me saying it's a pen, and I'm just saying how great this pen is, and this little kid is just how great. It's just a cute video, man. It's a wholesome, funny video. That's all. It's just wholesome and fun.
Yeah, so your song of the week is the remix of that.
It's calm. Yes.
I guess
that was awesome, dude.
I guess you could say that my song of the week is a little deeper than that.
Okay.
And
I swear, if you play D's Nuts, like if you do a song D's Nuts, I swear if you come up something like that.
No, my song of the week actually relates to our topic. I've done it the last couple of episodes, and our topic was truth on social media, and so I figured, why not use Little Lies by Fleetwood Mac?
Oh, great song. Little Lies. Amazing song. Tell me sweet little lies.
You know what the funny thing about you singing along is that because of the connection, it's like way desynced, because it takes the time for the song to get to you and then for your singing to come back to me, and it's like
delay. I know. Yeah. I will say, dude, first of all, I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan. I mean, Stevie Nicks I love her. Can I tell you a fact about Stevie Nicks? Or it's an urban legend. So did you know did you know that she did so much cocaine back in the day? Do you know where I'm going here?
No, I have no idea.
So the common way to do cocaine is up your nose. But she did so much cocaine that she had to do it through the rear.
I mean,
legend, gangster, legend.
Hey, listen, there's a reason why suppositories exist. Your ass is very good at absorbing things. There was a trend for a while there where people would use that to get drunk very quickly. There was two ways that I've heard.
Yeah, they put vodka on tampons, right?
Yeah, that was one way. Yeah, just on tampons and then up the ass it goes. And then another way that people have done it, which, by the way, in both cases, don't recommend, right? Not healthy. No, people have actually poured it into their eyes.
No way.
Like just a small amount of like something alcoholic. Like, and then, because again, it's just, as long as there's a surface that like absorbs stuff very effectively and gets it right into your bloodstream. But you can go blind from that, so I wouldn't recommend doing it. But,
no, we don't recommend, wait, Hollywood's gonna say this. We don't recommend doing any of this when we're saying, don't do this, please.
Don't do cocaine, and don't do anything up the butt that isn't meant to go up there. You can interpret that however you wish.
How did we get there, dude?
I mean, you started it.
I did. I'll take the credit for that one. I did. But no, all right, let's just end that. I don't want to get on the butt conversation. I don't want to do it, dude.
So yeah, that was my song of the week. Certainly started the conversation with that one.
Yeah. We might do a reaction to that song soon, actually. I love that song. Because I have no clue what it's about.
Well, I mean, just from my superficial listening of the lyrics, I would say that it's about pretty much the same thing that Loveful is about. It's about basing a relationship on lies, right? And the her welcoming it, basically.
Yeah.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. You know?
Yeah. I mean... talking to you as if I'm Smokey right now, she could also be saying, and this is why me and Smokey are such a good duo because, we're like the yin and yang to each other. But when maybe the sweet little lies is something she knows is a lie, but it's so sweet and she wants to hear it because she knows that the relationship's gonna work because of these lies. So, dude, since doing Rappers React, some of this song, like Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne, you know this song.
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Dude. Go back, listen to that song, and just listen to the lyrics. It's totally different. It's not what you think. Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, go listen to it. It's a totally different song when you actually know what he's talking about. It's Kiss. You've got freaking Gene Simmons behind you. By the way, I want to say this. You're a big Kiss fan, right?
I mean, I like Kiss. I think the Gene Simmons behind me might be overstating my interest in Kiss a little bit, but I do quite enjoy some of their music, yes.
I will say one of my favorite songs that while doing a year and a half, 2 years of Rappers React is a Kiss song called I Was Made for Loving You. That's one of the greatest things ever made. You've never heard that.
It's probably the most well-known Kiss song. I was just thinking it's probably also far from my least favorite.
More than Detroit City Rock, you think?
I would think so.
You think I Was Made?
Certainly with general audiences, yeah, I would think that I Was Made for Loving You, I think is... Because it's... I think I Was Made for Loving You might be the... Well, I Was Made for Loving You and Crazy Crazy Nights are probably the only songs that I've heard played on the radio from Kiss.
I love that song. By the way, it blew me and Smokey's mind that he's actually the lead singer, not Gene Simmons. We thought Gene Simmons was the lead singer. But the other guy is. Actually
didn't know that, but again, I'm not... Like, the thing is, I don't engage with bands the way some people do, right? There are a bunch of bands where like a couple of their songs, and that's about as deep as I go, right? I just looking at my music collection on my PC, I have 5 Kiss songs, right? Like having a giant Gene Simmons hanging behind me is more circumstantial than you might think.
Yes. From the outside looking in, it looks like you're a Gene Simmons super fan.
Yeah,
just from the outside looking.
The problem is, right, it's a bedsheet that I happen to have, right? Because it was a cheap thing in a supermarket that was just on the shelf, and like basically every time there's something with like a rock band on it or something, my mom buys it. And then like all of a sudden, like I have a bed cover that has Gene Simmons' face on it, and I'm like, okay, I mean, yes, I do listen to Kiss, I guess. And then I needed something to hang back there for the background because well, there's a window behind that, and I just wanted something to cover the window, and so that's what ended up hanging there because I was like, oh yeah, bedsheet is the right size, and then it's like this is the only one that has like a pattern on it that looks cool when I hang it down that way.
So with that being said, shout out to JJ's mom. JJ's mom, you're a legend. Shout out to you.
Speaking of shout outs, as we wind down this episode, do you want to shout out any of your projects? Anything you want to tell the people?
Yeah. Yes, if you guys aren't familiar, my name is Hollywood Six, and my co-host Smokey Ramirez. I'm one half of the Trash Talkers that do Rappers React, and we do a weekly podcast every Tuesday. We also have a new album coming out. I have my own solo album coming out. Smokey has his own solo album coming out very soon. So guys, go to the channel, check it out. I'm sure JJ will leave our link in the bio.
Always.
And just thank you. Yes, we just reached 100,000, so thank you guys so much for getting us to 100,000 subscribers. And I will say from the first day me and Smokey started to do this, we met JJ along with his friend Alex, and these guys have been nothing but amazing to us. So I want to plug that, and also want to say, JJ, you're awesome. You've been there when I've needed you, and all I can say is thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show, and I think that brings this episode to a close. Like the video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment if you have something to say, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this. You can join the Discord server. I'm pretty sure Hollywood's also still in there. And Hollywood.
That's it.
That's it.